back to day 3 of Walpole's Festival of Luxury Marketing. The focus for today is on innovation and the hyper-acceleration of digital luxury. In just 3 months, luxury brands made a 10-year leap in terms of their digital businesses, and the enforced digitization of our sector has been called one of the silver linings of 2020. As stores reopen and consumer confidence build, how can brands now capitalize on the gains made over the last few months to reimagine the customer experience? And what does digital excellence look like? To help guide us and share their expertise, we're joined this afternoon by a panel of leading lights in the field of all things digital. Alex Curry, Senior Head of Strategy and Project Management at FARFETCH, Janine Catrevin, Thom, Browne, Kate Moore, Global Director of Advocacy, Connections and E-commerce, and Stefano Pardi, Head of Industry UK Fashion and Luxury at Facebook. I'd like to invite the panel to join me on screen or stage now. Thank you all. In terms of formats today, we're going to have a conversation for about 40 minutes or so, and then we've got plenty of time for live Q&A. There should be in the bottom of your chat box, on the bottom of your screen, sorry, a live chat function. So please do enter your questions and we'll see those come in and we'll answer as many as possible. So to get us started, as I mentioned in the intro, the enforced digitization of luxury has seen this incredible period of rapid and unprecedented innovation in our sector. Things that would have taken months and possibly even years in terms of development and planning have actually been able to be expedited and delivered in a matter of weeks. But what are your predictions as we now kind of go back into the real world and back into stores? Are we going to continue to see this speed of digital adoption, or will we see some start of kind of a leveling out? I'm going to come to you first, Stefano, with that.
Yeah, hello, Charlotte and everyone. Great to be here today. I think that it's a beautiful question, and I think that what we are seeing at the moment is that some of the changes in consumer behavior are very likely going to be here to stay. Mm-hmm. So I'm probably very biased by my passion for technology and innovation. So I imagine that actually the future is going to look like an acceleration of these changes. So I'm thinking about what we have seen, for example, with the adoption of augmented reality and virtual reality across a number of sectors, whether it is fashion or beauty. And there is a genuine opportunity that luxury brands have in further enhancing actually the engagement they have with their customer base and users by combining the best of both worlds, right? So the physical locations, once they will become available again in the near future, while at the same time really doubling down on all the new technology that is available to them, whether it is a digital channel or a brand new piece of technology like AR and augmented reality.
Yeah, a terrific answer. And Kate, how about you? Obviously, the drink sector has a different relationship with digital to other industries. You know, what's your view? And you've really been leading the digital adoption for William Grant & Sons.
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of question about digitization or digital, it helps to think of digital not just as a channel, and that actually it's a means of reimagining sort of previous ways of communicating with consumers and how you create those flawless on and offline experiences. So with that said, to Stefano's point, I think we will continue to see that kind of increase. Crisis or no crisis, the digital revolution has been, it's been one of the biggest, if not the biggest, transition in human history. So adapting to that change has always been pre-crisis a bit of a challenge for certain generations, brands and markets. But, with Gen Z and future generations coming down the pipeline, their spending power might be small, but they're the future of luxury. So we've got to start adopting that sort of digital first mindset and really starting to engage with them, whilst not forgetting about the people who maybe aren't digital natives and, sort of digital first mindsets with those people.
I'm thinking back actually, so we're kind of thinking kind of 18 months into the future, thinking 6 months, back over this, period of enforced lockdown where we've been limited to our homes and our phones. Which categories have performed well? Alex, you sit across multiple brands with FARFETCH. What are people have been searching for? Which categories have done well in this time?
Hi, Charlotte. It's a great question, and I think there's actually probably 3 sort of macro trends that we really have seen sort of surface or become stronger in the lockdown, and actually I would say have accelerated as we've come out of well, temporarily in the UK, come out of lockdown a little bit. The first one is probably an increasingly big focus on the environment and sustainability. So it's now at the forefront of a lot of consumers' minds, and not an afterthought, but customers are sort of searching for sustainable brands and products from the outset. And we definitely see that in terms of search terms or filters that we have either on the FARFETCH marketplace or on other client sites. The products that are sort of have a lighter environmental footprint, are doing much better. And I think if you look at the sort of vintage and resale growth as a category during COVID, it was tremendous. Sales doubled on most sort of pre-loved marketplaces like a Vestiaire Collective during lockdown. And I think it's, again, maybe to Stefano's point of that was always there, or it was certainly there pre-lockdown, but the lockdown has accelerated that. The other two things, I think the next one probably goes without saying, but everything work from home edit. So whether it's athleisure and loungewear and athletic wear, you see a brand like a Pangaea or a Nike posting, triple digit growth, which is incredible. Or, in some cases, things like home accessories. So a luxury coffee maker because someone's not going out to get their coffee every morning. And then the last thing I would say, which is maybe the one that's the most surprising for me, but I think, is a positive thing for the luxury industry, is it really is about quality, not quantity. So I think consumers are thinking harder before they buy, or they're thinking twice before they buy, but they are buying. And we've seen an uptick in sort of watches and fine jewelry coming out of lockdown. And there's very much this concept of the sort of revenge outfit, as I think it was first coined in China, which is, I'm not going out as much, so when I go out, I better look phenomenal. And so we are seeing, purchases continue, but it's just with more forethought before they buy.
Thanks, that's a great answer. And Janine, would you agree with those comments?
I would also say, just coming from a tailoring brand, a brand best known for its tailoring, but also for we're pretty much a 75% ready to wear business. We're also our athleisure, as you would consider it, cardigans, knits. And we didn't see a slowdown in this category, but what we did see for sure is that customers are buying into quality. So they're coming to Thom Browne to buy into those quality, more comfortable pieces. But also, I'd say the more core and classic pieces that we have definitely performed better during this period.
That you made there, Alex, about vintage resale, because you'd kind of think there might be some concerns around the kind of hygiene factors with kind of resale, but that's great to hear that actually continued to perform well. Amazing. And Stefano, thinking about kind of the discovery of brands, how has that changed in this period? Are consumers discovering brands in a new way as a result of the crisis?
So, thanks for the question. I think that is in line with what Alex was mentioning a few moments ago. I think that the fact that people have been indoor, for lack of a better word, for such a long time and unable to actually walk down the high street and actually enjoy their favorite boutique is actually accelerating a trend that we already knew it exists, right? So it's the fact that consumers, people are not just searching for brands, but actually brands and products get discovered and delivered, if you wish, in front of the online media that consumers are using. So if I think about how the role that actually friends or influencers or content creators are actually playing in the discovery process, I think that we saw an acceleration of that. So of course we play in-house, so to speak, because with Instagram, we know how luxury consumers are kind of expecting to actually see trends being suggested to them on Instagram. And this is something that definitely we see an acceleration of because consumer really gets a much more personalized experience in terms of the most relevant product or the most relevant brand that they might be interested in that is just offered to them while they are online on their mobile.
Thank you. Kate, I want to bring you in here. the drinks category. I mean, it's so interesting in terms of their digital journey by nature of the product, but how it's normally consumed. And of course, has been particularly kind of hard hit over the last few months. How have you been working with the business and the brands within the portfolio at William Grant and Sons to kind of create the digital experience?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for us, one of the key benefits of being a family, sort of an independent family-owned business, is that ability to be agile, and that we get to think in generations and not quarters. So we've actually managed to very quickly pivot in a number of ways. And the thing, although we've never seen the scale of crisis before that we've seen now, we've got that heritage of kind of having gone through recessions, previously in our 132-year history. We overnight we sort of saw that collapse of the global travel retail sector, and also the on-trade sector, which is our bar and restaurant business, which are a crucial part of our source of business. And like everyone's been talking about today, we saw that shift of consumers into the online space, and with that change in drinking occasions. But that sort of significant change has meant the need to really quickly pivot. So in the case of our 100+ brand ambassadors, whose role is very much sort of largely physical, so it's about building relationships with bartenders, showcasing how to make our drinks and our brand recipes. Those guys had to sort of pivot overnight, and we had to move their role from being very physical to very digital. So we partnered with Quintessentially, and we did virtual one-to-one cocktail masterclasses with their members. We also wanted to go a step further in sort of supporting the on-trade and our hard-hit hospitality industry. So we launched a hashtag Stand Fast campaign, which was a multi-pronged effort to really support that hospitality industry, and helping our kind of commercial and marketing teams to really redeploy their efforts in something that wasn't just a one-off, but is ongoing as the industry continues to recover. We also had to rethink things like festivals. So there's an annual Spirit of Speyside festival. Rather than cancel it, cancel everything that we would have done around that, we turned it with the Glenfiddich brand to our advantage, and we launched a special celebratory bottling, which was launched in partnership with Whiskey Auctioneer, and we raised 240,000, which all went to local charities for people affected by COVID. So it was really lovely to be able to give something back and actually very quickly adopt or adapt from something which would have been a normal sort of limited edition whiskey bottling to something that we could be a bit more philanthropic about. We'd also moved very much to sort of live streaming and mentoring programs, and we got to, I think, on JD.com, which is a big retail player in China, we got to be the #1 selling whiskey brand with Glenfiddich for March and February. So I think, we've had to make a lot of pivots ourselves, but we're also seeing those changes happening in the industry at large. So sales of alcohol online are prohibited in certain markets. And what we've started to see during this time is some markets are starting to relax those laws, and some of them are starting to sort of completely change on that. So, it's not just ourselves, but it's also the changes with the industry at large.
Of course, that greater kind of ecosystem, and as we do return to kind of normal life, and it's kind of it's baby steps and a fragile recovery here in the West. How do you see your digital experience working alongside the physical experience when we are back to a more normal life and we are out for drinks? Could you still see you'll be doing the kind of live streaming, you'll still be doing the online tastings?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I said at the start, that integration between the on and the offline world will be absolutely crucial for us. When we sell bottles of whiskey for, 25,000 up to £50,000, people aren't going to just buy those online. So yes, online sales are growing, and we've seen triple-digit growth during the COVID period and post the COVID period. We already had a well-established e-com business, but this is very much now around how do we reimagine and utilize digital in a way to create social experiences when you've got social distancing measures in place, particularly if the on-trade takes such a long time to actually recover. And bearing in mind that the local governments have sort of determined how the experiences during COVID have happened, it will be the same sort of post-COVID. So I think for us, really starting to look at our entire consumer journeys and how we really think about digitizing and reimagining those will continue to be absolutely critical.
Thank you. I wanted to bring in you, Alex and Janine here, actually, and a brilliant segue there. You know, thinking about this kind of reimagining the kind of customer experience now, given that you know, digital is just, well, it always was, but it's now absolutely cemented its position in the customer experience. What do you think businesses need to be getting right to delight and deliver the customer now? And perhaps we can talk about some of the things around customer service, delivery excellence, returns. Just give us your, if you were talking to brands, you know, what would you tell them they need to be doing right now? Maybe to you out first, Alex and Janine. Sorry, I should have
Sure. So I think you're right, Charlotte. It really is about 24/7 customer service, or just service excellence in everything you do across all touch points. I think you know, with consumers going out less and potentially interacting with brands, at least in the physical space, slightly less. You really need to make them feel like they've made the right choice when they decide to give you their time and their energy and ideally their wallet. And I think there's probably two things for me. The first is actually sort of tone of voice, and this really comes down to sort of overall communications. I think you need to adapt to the current climate. So, you know, we've had a year of particularly high social injustice across not just COVID, but many fronts. And I think in your messaging as a brand, being conscientious of not just how your brand sits in the space, given all things considered, but actually how is this impacting your core customers, and what is sort of a conscientious and current message is relevant more than ever before. And I guess what I would say to that, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, shopping is a form of escapism. And if you're shopping for fashion and accessories in general, it's psychological, right? So customers still want that thrill and that escape from their day-to-day. So it's a hybrid of both. The second thing I would say, and I you know, there's a lot that you touched on that I could probably comment on, but I have to comment on the technology bit, given I work at a tech company. But I would say it really is about you know, getting the use of technology in your business right. And I don't mean that that's just for your end customers. So the digital channels, be it e-com or an app, or, you know, through Instagram or the other, you know, Facebook, the other social channels. But it's actually also about, you know, how are you empowering your sales associates? I think we've seen a lot of brands and retailers get really creative in the last few months and start doing things like, you know, a video conference shopping appointment where the sales associate will try on the clothing so the customer can see how it really fits. Or, you know, you're starting to see a try before you buy. So you can order the item, they don't actually take payment, and you can return it if you don't like it before your credit card is even charged. And I think it's about still finding a way to deliver that one-to-one experience, but potentially from the comfort of someone's living room. So how do you meet the customer on their terms, if you will?
Thanks, Alex. And Janine, what are you, you know, you work across Thom Browne with FARFETCH, but you've got an amazing career helping luxury brands go digital. You know, what advice would you be giving to brands now in terms of what they need to be getting right and how they reimagine that customer experience?
So there are a few points that Alex brought out, which I would 100% agree with. But I would basically say sometimes it's the fundamentals. You know, I worked at LVMH Group for the digital group before coming to work with Thom Browne and kind of take them through their digital journey as the VP of e-business. But what I would say that, you know, working at LVMH, we worked on chatbots, you know, with our client service teams, whether it's group or whether it's done internally. I've also worked on you know, artificial recognition tools within the store. But if they're not adapted across departments, and if they're not integrated into the right customer journey, I remember one of the tools that we kept getting requested for was booking appointments. Nobody was really using them really at that time. And then, of course, now those that have them have really been set up for, you know, COVID challenges. So it was kind of a back in your face, but really, truly at that time, was it the right solution for them? And I think that was almost kind of luck, but everything we've talked about here is being propelled. So there are a lot of things sometimes that you need to take that gamble, go ahead and integrate it, and put a roadmap to say, okay, well, how exactly we're going to use it? Who do we need to get to adapt to it? How do we bring that value to the customer? Is it something they're going to use? So, I think as well, going back to fundamentals, the thing that really saved Thom Browne is the way that we do work with FARFETCH as a marketplace, as a setup. This is just about product. Customers want to shop. And I think a lot of the challenges a lot of stores had, particularly retailers, is that they weren't set up. If something were to happen to that one stock point that they had, so no longer can they drive sales. And that's a fundamental issue. So being sometimes the unsexy part of being able to handle how you move stock and how you make sure that your teams are really enabled. So, as Alex mentioned, technology should be an enabler. And that's one thing that I think Thom Browne did incredibly well. We really worked across global stock points to be able to shift the product as soon as and as fast as we could, have people walking to some of our stores, which also serve as stock points. So that I think is the second point. And then the third point is, similar to what Alex was mentioning, going from omni-channel to being omnipresent. So thinking across not only how you sell and what you sell and where you sell it, but also, I think this term might have been coined by McKinsey, if I'm not mistaken, but really thinking omnipresent. So what are people talking about you? Are you saying the right things? Are you aware, not only the social injustice that has been happening, in America? We're an American brand, we need to be very aware of that, but also what's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening around the world. Are we just as authentic in all of the markets that we're serving? Because as e-business, you really touch the World Wide Web, and you also touch across multiple ecosystems, including applications and other retail partners. So I would say, what you really need to be focusing on right now is the fundamentals, and also being authentic in everything that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I love that expression, omnichannel to omnipresent. It's I also love the comment you made earlier, Kate, about generations, not quarters. There's an excellent quotable quote that I will be using in many sessions going forwards. So I think my mic might be catching a little bit. Apologies, it's making a bit of background noise. We are on, I think it was Monday with our session with Bain. They were talking about the customer expectation around for luxury is that, that luxury customer is also an Amazon customer, and their expectations around things like delivery excellence are in line with what they can get from Amazon. And for a luxury brand not to be able to deliver in 3 days, just is out of sync with what the customer is actually wanting to experience now. I guess, delivery excellence is it sounds so easy, but it's incredibly hard. Alex and Janine, I'd love to come to you both and how you can, share some insight there is, from a luxury brand perspective, what does delivery excellence need to look like? Maybe to you first, and then you, Alex.
Okay, it is an incredibly, especially as you're global, because you rely not only on your global couriers, whether it's UPS or DHL or whoever, but you also rely on your domestic. When you're talking about last mile solutions, it's 100% a domestic solution. As a small brand, it's even working within the LVMH portfolio in my previous job, you're not the biggest brand in every single market. So you really rely on either the right technology partners, third-party partners that you're integrated with, because a lot of them are going to be, holding that, especially on e-business. And then you have to work with them to improve those contractual negotiations, get into their priority to make sure that, if Japan isn't a priority for them, it is for you as a business, and you need to be looking and constantly testing. What we do at Thom Browne is we're using our local teams to make sure that we're testing the last mile solution, which is what you're touching on right here.
Yeah. Terrific, thank you. And Alex, obviously FARFETCH is amazing in terms of delivery excellence. What's the expectation of the customer now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think I echo Janine's comments around sort of using your global network. If you're a brand that has a global network, thinking about using the stock that's closest proximity to the customer is not only cost effective, but also, faster and potentially drives customer satisfaction. But I guess I guess what I would say is I think about it holistically. So there's been a lot of pressure on brands to speed up delivery and delivery options. And I think, having speed of sending sort of accelerate as a brand, your operation needs to be slick. But if you're having challenges there, then I think there's ways, whether it be it through customer service or other parts of the service and communications that you have with the customer, the post sale, that it's a hard thing to get right. So if you fall down in one area, I think the consumer is forgiving, especially right now. And so I guess what I would say is think about it as end to end and not just in isolation, though of course it's important to get it right.
Yeah, terrific. Great answers. And one last thing, think about returns as well. I mean, for so many businesses, it's just seen as a massive headache, and they're not really thinking about the opportunity to drive customer loyalty and really kind of win kind of that love of a customer if you can make that returns process effortless and as easy as possible. How are you squaring that off? What are you doing to kind of innovate in that returns experience? Maybe to you first, Janine, then Alex.
I have to be honest, this is something that we haven't innovated in. We are bound to. Yeah, I have to be honest, on that aspect we're not, but it is something that we're pushing our technology partner, because it is reliant on the front end and who we use for our services. So that's something, again, you have to really prioritize with your external partner, because you don't own that part of it, and you do have to work with them on the roadmap to make sure that you have online exchanges and all the fundamentals there. But I actually do iterate what Alex said too. Where you fall down, you could also overcome in how you message that to the customer, how so that your client service team are fully on board. They're able to support, whether it's through the live chat solutions and finding the information on the site very readily, the unboxing experience that they have when they get to the package to their house, how easy those returns are with the tools that you have. So can they, for example, on our return slip, although I can't change right now what's happening in the checkout path, what I can change is how we communicate. We have a very strong global Asian audience, and so we make sure that we're putting our QR code that scan and automatically it pops up and takes them to their My Account system. But you can also access through URL, for the more Western customer who's more, I guess more comfortable with that journey. So we make sure that we're thinking about the customer and how they can easily access the information they need and how to get to the returns that they can do.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I might bring Kate in here as well. Kate, in terms of thinking about some of that direct-to-consumer experience that as a drinks brand you're also offering. How are you making that? How are you improving that piece around delivery? I mean, less so for returns, but how are you improving that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think our direct-to-consumer business, so we have our Glenfiddich store, and I think we've gone through a real learning journey over the last sort of 4 years. We're not a retail business. That wasn't our sort of first, or an online retail business. That wasn't our first port of call. So for us, it's been really trying to start to understand the consumer journey, consumer needs. We've partnered with the likes of Amazon, for example, and really looked at last mile delivery. We've looked at, I think similar trends to the ones everyone's been talking about already. How do we start to think about sustainable packaging? How do we improve the delivery service? I think when I started at the business about 4 years ago, I think our express delivery was probably about 3 days, because the scale was so relatively small. But as the business has grown and the scale has grown and the role of direct to consumer has become much more prevalent, we've had to move with that and look at 3PL options and how we think we need to improve that consumer experience, taking it, I guess, really from that small scale sort of handcrafted approach that we would have taken back in the day to now, how do you recreate that handcrafted experience, but do it more at scale with the partners that we choose to work with.
Yeah, and I think within this kind of excellence, but kind of just piece, I want to talk a bit about clienteling 2.0, which I think was a phrase coined by Boston Consulting Group, and within that, the role that personalization plays. And that's more than just investing in your CRM, but using the power of AI to deliver this new level of personalization, both in terms of product, but also customer journey. I'd love to spend a few minutes now just talking about what you're doing in terms of personalization and where you see the future and advice that you'd have for brands. Stefan, I'd love to hear from you from Facebook in terms of thinking with how are you helping to personalize the experience for the clients you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that there are a number of ways. I mean, I think that our solutions and our platform, like Instagram, Facebook, they're all built around the community, right? So, and people coming from a people first approach. So everything that we do is actually around making sure that the content that we're sharing with our users is actually relevant and what they're looking for. So one of the most recent launch that we have done, and the way we have been thinking about empowering brands to actually get closer and closer to people, is actually the Facebook shop and Instagram shop solutions that are going around the same topic that both Alex and Janine and Kate have been talking about, around building a real frictionless future where actually there is the customer journey is considered as an end-to-end from the moment of discovery of the product, of the brand, all the way down then to how people are actually interacting with a new brand or a new product, whether they're discovering it because because of the followers that they're looking at, or their friends, or messages that they've been receiving, and then giving brands themselves, whether they're small, independent, or whether they're actually large organizations, the ability to actually immediately engage with people and potential consumers at the moment in which they're discovering their brand and their product. And this is something that for me is super exciting, and I would love to say that it's a job done, but in reality we are, I wouldn't say that we're at the beginning, but we are definitely at an initial stage, right? So it's something that, again, the tragic event of COVID actually gave us a tremendous push, because they accelerated a series of development at the beginning of the year that are unprecedented, since both Instagram shop and Facebook shops have been launched in May, and we're rolling them out as we speak. And I think that going back to some of the points that both Alex and Janine were talking about, how to think about the end-to-end process, is also how to manage the communication with clients. We saw that a lot of the success stories that we saw during COVID were also brands that were actually proactively managing the communication with their end consumers, and they were actually letting them know there is going to be 3 days delay, or there is going to be potential stock issues that might be unforeseen. And I think that this is bringing all the relationship in between brands and consumers much more personal, that I find very exciting.
It is. It feels like such I agree totally. The absolute huge human tragedy of COVID has led to some incredible innovation and a really exciting period. And we're going to look back at this moment in 2020 and just realize the enormity with which, we're probably realizing it already, right? But actually I think in time we will look back and just see the phenomenal leaps that have been made and a future reimagined so quickly. Kate, how about you with the kind of personalization? Obviously, historically you had personalization of product, but how are you actually rethinking personalization across the business?
Yeah, so I guess, product sort of goes without saying, and we absolutely did, it's not going anywhere. But I think for us, it's also around communications, and that's not just about, media buys. I think we're on a journey where the one size fits all approach to communications just won't cut it anymore. So how we sort of work with our media partners to really start to tailor those messaging using data. But it's also around our ambassador communities. So advocacy is a really important part of our business and how we've developed the business over the years. So actually how we nurture those offline influencer relationships around the world, because they are the ultimate personalized sort of relationships that we have. I think it's also for us around the experience side of things. So not having such an I guess, we don't necessarily own many retail outlets, etc. So we have to work a lot with partners to create those offline experiences and online experiences. But it's definitely starting to think around how we utilize the technology available to us to sort of better seamlessly integrate the experiences on and offline. So, for example, we did our very first sort of hack, we called it our hackadram, so the sort of first hack that we did as a business, where we had lots and lots of different companies come to us, gave them a few briefs, and one of the things that came out of that was actually the opportunity to look at blockchain technology. So we started to look at that with some of our innovation brands and how we really kind of created that personalized experience and started looking at the distillation steps that each individual bottle through a unique code had been through, so that people could get that real understanding of the sort of credibility, the process, and the authenticity, I suppose, of the products themselves. And that's been a really interesting thing. But I think we're still experimenting with lots of those different arenas within personalization and how we can really start to kind of scale that as we move forward.
I love hackadram. That is genius. And
it was
Alex,
great fun.
Hugely fun. And Alex, with FARFETCH, a huge business, and you must be doing a phenomenal amount around personalization. Can you share a couple of highlights of where you think that future of personalization is going to be?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Charlotte. I think, in all honesty, I think FARFETCH is okay at personalization, but we are investing a lot to get better. And I think it's actually the starting point is at what touch points does personalization start and stop? And it probably never stops, in all honesty. So it's everything from the pre-sale comms to the client. So, when you're sending emails or reaching out on a one-to-one basis, or when I go into an app or a homepage, am I seeing a curated set of products that are relevant to me, all the way through to when I search, is the search engine recognizing me as a customer based on my preferences, and potentially are my prices different because I'm a VIP customer and I've bought this brand before, and so that brand is chosen to invest and reward me for it. So, and then I guess in the post-sale follow-up, is that comm special because of the particular product I bought, or maybe I didn't buy something and there's the follow-up loop, which is not just an email anymore that is a transactional email, but it has a message that's closer to me. So I think it's, I like the word that I think it was Kate used, which is about being omnipresent. And I think it really is about, there isn't a channel. It's, the online channel in the future should be as personalized as if I walk into a Thom Browne store, in Manhattan, and I should have a similar experience online. And I think, I guess, the only other thing I would echo, which probably has come up in all of what's been previously said, is technology shouldn't be put in just for technology's sake. So I really, and that includes personalization, like personalization that's not going to drive conversion or it's not going to drive value in some capacity. Okay, but I think the business underlying need really has to be what drives the adoption of any technology, be it solution or feature you implement.
I think you've hit a great point there. Sorry, you go, Janine, please.
I was just going to add, and actually we partner with FARFETCH to do a bit of research on that piece, because that was a great segue into one of our examples. Not implementing, and sometimes having to change your priority just based on what's happening. So we were doing a size and fit review because, as a ready-to-wear brand, that is a huge importance for us. So we were looking at personalizing the customer journey based on, having your own feed, based on the size and fit, both through AI and your own injection. And we looked at different tools. We did a multivariate test with them, and then also on their platform. The other thing you have to consider as a smaller brand is if you don't have that volume of traffic like the Amazons of the world, or your AI is going to be, it's not going to be as performing as quickly or as great as you need it to be. So you have to also be realistic, I think, to some aspect. But we did a testing with a size and fit with 2 different tools. And what we were finding actually is that in some countries, it actually increased negative behaviors. If the customer was cautious of which size they wanted, it recommended the other size. They would then purchase 2 because they were concerned that, they still wanted to try theirs, they wanted to try your recommendation, and the returns increased, which is something we'd have to take on board, and we'd have to look at the different markets. There are some markets who are more okay to make returns, other markets which are much more reticent, just as a cultural norm, I guess. But with the introduction of COVID and the pandemic that was happening, what we did see increasing was less of, I want more, what we call self-service on the internet, but actually they lost the interaction with our product experts, our size and fit experts. And so what we've done now is we haven't stopped that. That is still something we're going to advance with, but it won't be this month. And what we pivoted to is looking at a chat solution. So we're now implementing Hero, the clienteling app, working with FARFETCH as our service provider, and implementing that tool. And what it does is it offers our customer real time to be able to engage with a retail sales associate to understand very specifically product knowledge questions and size and fit concerns. A lot of our customers are sending this to us, for our client service teams. We have about 25% of our inquiries are based on product questions. So we really want, one, to leverage the retail teams that are available and their incredibly deep knowledge of all of our products. So for us, I think it's sometimes as well, this has been mentioned before, but it's really listening to what your customers are asking for, being attuned to their needs, and also being attuned to what's happening.
And terrific insight from you all, and what I kind of love there is that actually sometimes the perceived wisdom of this new function is going to really help X, and then you discover actually it creates a negative behavior, and then it's kind of rethinking how we can bring back actually the personal connection that's so at the heart of the brand. And Alex, I think that you touched on a brilliant point there. Actually, you want all the benefits of personalization without that slight creepiness of personalization, where you think, I kind of didn't want the brand to think that or know that, because actually that was just a random search I did for my husband or my boyfriend, and actually it's got nothing to do with my preferences.
Completely.
I also think the customer, in terms of we're putting this phenomenal amount of, information and data out there about ourselves, and the customer wants to know that the brands are using it, because, I'm giving it to you. So I want you to know I'm a repeat customer. I want you to know that I've actually been shopping for you for 20 years and not ask you, is this the first time you visited the brand? I think there is that huge expectation around and a responsibility with it, but enough of personalization. It's a subject I'm fascinated in. So I could easily kind of happily go down a rabbit hole and talk further on that. Stefano, you mentioned a few moments ago the introduction of Facebook shops, just launched in May this year, bringing us closer to that kind of holy grail of frictionless and seamless experience that sounds so easy, and in reality we know how completely challenging it is. But it has enabled businesses of every size to set up an online store instantaneously. What's the response been from brands and customers, and how can businesses work with you? We have a lot of SMEs in our membership community, and things like Facebook is a brilliant solution.
Yeah, so thanks for asking, and I might be repeating a little bit myself. I mean, it's definitely super exciting, and I think it's early days to get proper read on the feedback we're getting, because again, we launched in May and we're still rolling out more and more. So I think this month we extended our checkout solution in the US. So I guess that the very practical advice for everyone who is interested, I'm hoping that a lot of people will be interested, is definitely to stay very close to your Facebook representative or just to the rollout calendar that we have, because we are going to go with a very aggressive timelines to make these features available to many geographies. I think that the feedback we're getting and what we are seeing and the expectation both from small brands and large brands is what I mentioned earlier on, and around the ability to actually stay very close to people and to consumers, so where consumers already are. For people that might not be familiar with Facebook and Instagram shops, those are mobile first solutions that are actually responding to an acknowledgement that actually 50% of digital sales are already happening on mobile. And obviously the recent events of COVID are only accelerating this trend, and we expect that in next year is going to be even more than that. So people are already on their mobile, and I think that they, as I mentioned earlier on, they're discovering brands and products while they are on their mobile. So from our point of view, it makes sense to give both brands and users the ability to actually even further engage with the product that they're enjoying and that they're discovering because of interest that they have, or what their friends might be recommending them, or what their friends might be sharing online, and giving them immediately an opportunity to to discover more about a product and potentially purchase it in a very seamless way on our integrated checkout without ever having to leave their app. So it's highly exciting. Again, early days to share any numbers on how this is working, but I know that across all the geographies where this is available, there is a lot of interest. Especially from a small medium business perspective, I think that it's exciting to see how much agency brands can actually gain by being in full control of their end-to-end experience on this additional channel that we're offering.
Terrific, thank you. I wanted just to ask a couple of questions around, given the kind of the breadth of things we've talked about, are you seeing your businesses, are you seeing your clients, you're rethinking their team structures to be able to capitalize on this new future? Kate, how about you? What are you having to rethink the team structure and bringing in new skills? What's your experience?
So I think as the world, I think with most businesses, right, we've all kind of sat there and said, actually, what does this new normal look like, and what are the types of skills that we are going to need to put into the business? So we can no longer think about commercial channels of trade as siloed, for example. So how do we start to upskill, to think about, you know, the types of skills that we need to bring into the business which we don't already have, and then how do we upskill the existing kind of community that we have within the business? But it's definitely, I think digital capability has been a thing for quite some time in most companies, and that kind of thinking around digitally transforming your business. Whereas I think for us, this is much more holistic, and it's about how do we think about bringing those commercial and marketing worlds together. So without kind of giving too much information around what we're planning on doing, there are definitely considerations around what the new world will actually require.
Thank you. I'm really conscious of time. A quick reminder, we have got the live chat function, so do send questions in if you'd like to. We've got about another 10-15 minutes. Thinking about, you know, a UK perspective, and obviously, you know, just purely thinking kind of at the current time, you know, our customer for the rest of the year, from a Browne's perspective, is going to be a domestic customer. But not only domestic, it's going to be a really local customer, and particularly with, you know, kind of the latest developments in terms of case numbers rising, etc. A question back to you, Stefano, but actually to you all, is, you know, how, for Stefano particularly, kind of how can you use Facebook and Instagram to specifically reach local customers? But I'd love to hear from you all how you're thinking about and supporting brands with that kind of that local customer kind of marketing, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, from a Facebook perspective, again, I'll go back to my point that our solutions are built around people and enabling actually businesses to tap into local shoppers, and local shoppers also with a twist, because it could be international shoppers for those brands that actually have a distribution system that enables them to actually ship to them. So my very pragmatic recommendation would be to probably twofold. Is on one side is use all the features that the social media platforms provide you. So whether it is a story, whether it is Instagram TV, whether it is live videos, whether it is feeds, is make sure that you're present where users are. So your customer are actively engaging on social media and on digital channels and on mobile, and different people might have different preferences. So you might have a consumer who is really into stories, while others are actually more into feed. So the ability of actually taking advantage of where people are is critical. And the second very pragmatic recommendation would be let the machine learning do the job for you. So there is still a lot of marketeers that are actually trying to be overly prescriptive around how they reach their audiences and how they want to target them. So is embrace technology and machine learning and let the machine actually do the job for you in terms of identifying who should you target with which product, to enable, as the rest of the panel has been discussing, to reach this highly personalized experience in terms of which product is the most relevant for the right audience. I want to mention a little bit I love your definition of having local customers, and one of the things that we saw successful brands taking advantage of during COVID was actually the ability to automatically reach audiences outside of your home market, and this was quite a discovery for us as well, because we saw that the moment in which some brands actually trusted the machine learning algorithm, they actually tapped into geographies that they were not targeting before, because that's the power of actually data and the processing capabilities that we offer. When mentioning that, I would suggest anyone to trust us but blindly, but it's actually, as I think both Alex and Janine and Kate were mentioning, in terms of the adaptation and personalization, is make sure that you also are very rigorous and very open to innovation and measurement. So is adopt a test and learn mentality, the way I like to call it, and make sure that you're actually measuring the results of what you see, so that you can then continue to optimize solutions like ours, as well as other channels to the most.
Thank you. And I know it's the kind of distinction kind of with local customer and almost the digital world becomes irrelevant. I'm thinking of some of our smaller member businesses who haven't internationalized in terms of even kind of international kind of e-com. So they're kind of sitting thinking, how do I access the Chinese customers? They can't. I've got a domestic UK customer. Anybody else want to share a couple of thoughts on that before I move to the next question? So I'm going to move on. A quick just on live streaming. Obviously, we've seen in Asia the phenomenal impact of live streaming. Actually, tomorrow, for anybody who's able to join us, we've got a whole day focused on Asia, and live streaming and social commerce is going to be one of the big topics of the afternoon. Is that something that you could see the brands doing here in Europe and the UK? Do you think we're ready for it? Maybe Janine, with your you obviously, yeah. So.
I can jump in. And it's an incredibly good question. We're still asking ourselves about the uptake and why and how to do it. Even in Asia, we have a very strong presence in Asia. We just did a live stream today, actually, for a big collaboration with Samsung. We went live with a Thom Browne edition. So it's been a big week for us, I would say. But you have to do it well and you have to do it right. So anything, again, it goes back to the same thing we keep talking about, technology. Same thing with live streaming, any kind of production, any kind of content you're producing, it has to feel authentic, but also you have to trial. You really have to sometimes be brave. Thom himself always says we could do anything as long as it's done in the Thom Browne way. And that's working closely as a team and understanding your brand voice, understanding what works well for you and doing it the right way. So in answer to your question about, whether we think Europe is going to have the same uptick, I think live streaming, if you think about, at least for us, for the Asian customer, our Asian customer is almost more than 80%, at least our Asian engaged audience, should we say, is more than 80% 18 to 35-year-olds. So they are still very much, and this is kind of globally known, that they do skew to be quite, younger, very digitally savvy. They also have, different ecosystems, the way that they use WeChat and Weibo, and speaking of the Chinese audience in Korea, Naver, KakaoTalk, it is quite different to how we're using it, I would say, in our Western world. And also the questions that we have a lot about privacy and security and checkout and, the different regulation that we have, in questions. I think what's happening in the US right now, even with the GDPR and everything that happened in the past 4 years. So will live streaming take an uptake as quickly as Asia? I don't know, is my answer. But I think you have very, very different, the way that we're using technology, just like we always say, don't expect what you do here to resonate well in a totally different market. I would say don't copy paste what you're doing incredibly well over there and expect it to all of a sudden, go crazy. But trial, do something and see how it works and how your customers take it up. Why not?
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. I've got another question I want to come to around conversion rates. Obviously, at the kind of the height of our lockdown, digital traffic rocketed, but conversion rates were lower than anticipated. what tools can you use to shift browsing to purchase? But then I want to ask a question about how do you kind of manage that tension internally between, the measures of success that are purely about, conversion and sales, and then that broader view of actually, things that perhaps in the mindset of the marketing team about brand engagement, and how do you find a more balanced view of the right metrics? Kate, what are you doing with William Grant & Son?
Yeah, I think it's a healthy tension, and the temptation during a period like this is to overly focus on efficiency metrics, as opposed to those sort of longer term brand equity measures. The risk of doing that is that it's quite easy to kind of lose a sense of how the brands are doing over time, and can potentially damage premium credentials. Sorry. So I think it's about sort of championing the importance of conversions for the commercial parts of the business. It's also keeping an eye on the long-term metrics, tracking and brand engagement for future growth and success. So in short, sort of giving love to both commercial and marketing parts of the business. I think, there's also the challenge around a digital and data agenda, and that they specifically focus the mind on the data that you can measure rather than the things that are actually really driving business performance. So being clear on the objective of the activity so we can set the right KPIs at the beginning, making sure we've got a balanced scorecard across both the longer term metrics such as brand equity and health, and then the shorter term, so the conversion activities. But I think it's also about sort of rethinking the brands that are going to do well during this time aren't the ones who are going to be compromising during the recession because of the business pressures, offering discounts, etc. So how do we actually not focus in so much on driving current consumers through to conversion, but actually thinking longer term as well about sort of the rest of the potential the rest of the potential pot of consumers out there. And again, I think for us, we're in that fortunate position because we don't have to report that these things in quarters. We can think, generation after generation.
It's terrific. Alex, it's you. Can you unmute Alex, please?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, great. I was jumping in anyway and cutting you off, so it's a good thing I was on mute. I was actually going to jump in because I think it's interesting from a FARFETCH point of view. We are, as a tech business, an incredibly data-driven business in everything that we do. And I guess I would say two things. The first is that I think it's really important to consider a holistic data set. So, while conversion may be down, at least on FARFETCH across all of our tenants over COVID, conversion, may be down, but actually return rates are also down. So, and AOV is up. So if you look at conversion in isolation, yes, then I think your business is suffering. But actually, as a business, we're public and our results are public, and we're not down. So I think that's where just, having a healthy competition, as Kate said, is important between teams, but so long as it's being rolled up and actually everyone has visibility to the greater good of the business, because ultimately you're all striving towards the same thing.
Terrific. A great point. I'm going to have room for a couple of more questions. Do you think there is customer interest in more sustainable delivery options, particularly the last mile delivery? Alex, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so absolutely. FARFETCH has invested a lot in this, and there's a lot more to come over the last, I would say, even year. So, environmentally friendly packaging. We're working very closely with our biggest partners, our biggest carriers, so the likes of DHL and UPS, to figure out how we have a carbon neutral footprint. Adding things in options, these are rudimentary things at this point, but adding in things like customers being able to opt for environmentally friendly packaging, I think has become, I don't want to say table stakes, but it's not uncommon to see it now. So, and those are just, really end consumer things. But I do think back to the theme of sustainability and sort of, whether it's resale or sustainably made products, that is a huge theme over the course of, and we are seeing, I can't share specific numbers, but we are seeing significant uplift for brands that are environmentally conscious or positively conscious, as we call it at FARFETCH.
That's on Friday. I'm just mentioning other things happening across the week, but on Friday our day is focused on sustainability and purpose. And so for anybody interested in that as a big agenda point for luxury, please join us on Friday as well. I think we're going to have to wrap up time-wise because we're just coming to the end of our session. That has been absolutely brilliant. I have loved talking to you, and what a phenomenal depth of insight that you've shared for everybody. I mean, really kind of getting under the skin of the things you need to be getting right, and what are some of the big challenges and opportunities that's on people's minds, and how are you as businesses dealing with them. So a huge thank you to Alex, Janine, Kate and Stefano. What a brilliant session. I've really loved it. We have now got a live chat, well, a live kind of breakout session. If any other audience would like to join us on Zoom, that should just be in the chat function at the bottom of your screen. In terms of the formal program, we'll be back at 4 o'clock with Princess Yachts and Woven to talk about how do you take those big real world events and translate them digitally, and what's happening in the world of the ultra high net worth in terms of the digital landscape. And then tomorrow we're back for a day focused on all things Asia. So a huge thank you to all. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you at the next session.